Welcome everybody to City National Bank's hosting of a small business webinar on exploring AI, discovering opportunities, confronting challenges, and mitigating risks for business growth. We're happy to have you with us. First, a little bit of legalese from our lawyers. Want to make sure that everyone understands this is for informational purposes only and does not replace independent professional judgment. So as you go through these concepts and you have some ideas or questions or you want to take action, it's always good to do your own research and consult with professionals in the space. I'm joined today by Dr. Hernan Landano. He's the Chief Technology and Innovation Strategist at Dell Technologies. I'm Brian Fricke. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer here at City National Bank, and we're both very excited to talk to you about AI.
Hey, Brian, thank you for the invite. It is really great to be here. What a better topic than AI and for the small business community. So very happy to join you today.
Very good. Glad to have you with us. So we're going to cover a few topics in our agenda. We're going to look at current trends in the landscape, leveraging AI through the different channels that you might have as a small business owner, strategies to address the risk and the use of AI, some of the resources that you can leverage in your exploration, and then talk a little bit about the future of AI in small business, and we'll have a little bit of Q&A at the end. So talking about the current trends, tell me, Doctor, what is AI? Let's set the stage for the audience. Help us understand, what are we talking about when we think of AI? It comes in so many different flavors. There's so much hype around it, but help us with that foundational understanding.
Right. Well, there's a great way to start. I think the small business community and everybody, for that matter, has been bombarded with a number of different definitions and understandings about AI. And, it's our jobs, you, Brian, myself, people who speak about this, to kind of demystify that concept. And there is a ton of technicality, obviously, around the concept of artificial intelligence, but in a non-technical way. Artificial intelligence is what we are striving for when it comes to helping humans or enhancing human ability to automate tasks, for example, or to do analysis that couldn't be done before because it required too many people, too many hours. So artificial intelligence is, we can say, is an emergent technology, even though it has been in formation for over 50 years, but it was not used quite the way it's been used now. So we call it an emergent technology, and it is that technology that is enhancing what we've been doing as humans and is helping automate some things. But it is also helping to discover things that we couldn't quite see before, and that is definitely enhancing the way we are producing things, the way we are enabling organizations to be more productive. And I'm going to cover, by the way, this nice graphic, right? So very fitting for the audience to understand that there's different kinds of AI. There is machine learning, there is computer vision, there is, if you've been tuning the news recently, let's say for the past year, there is generative AI as the one flavor of AI that is dominating the news cycle, and they all do different things. Some of them, in fact, are combinations of other kinds of AI, like generative AI. For those that are that like technicality, generative AI comes from machine learning. It comes from natural language processing. It also comes from something called neural networks. And we're not going to go into a lot of detail about these things, but you can use technologies within the umbrella of AI and create other new flavors. And that's kind of where we are today. And they're used for different things. And we're going to talk about some of those cases today.
And for our audience, really, if I look at it from top to bottom, it's really that bottom one that is most of value to our small business owners, mid-sized business owners, in the context of a lot of what we're going to go through. I suspect that not a lot of people will need to have their own machine learning, deep learning, supervised, unsupervised methodologies. That most of our audience is going to be able to consume commercial products that are ready to go, that are using generative AI and are really an outcome of the use of the top layers. So I don't want to get our audience too too shocked at first. So
Absolutely, absolutely. And that is a great way to, talk about trends, if you will. So the trends for the different segments of our economy, let's say, the trends are different. Some will find a lot of value on what we call train their own models because they have the scale and the magnitude of the tasks and the information and the investment they can make is massive. And that's the perfect element for them to consider when it comes to AI. For the small business community, there is one of the trends is there is a lot of commercial products that are embedding these AI capabilities so that the small community doesn't have to take their own model and train it and make that investment. They can consume it in a way that makes sense for them. So that's a great element that you brought up to the conversation.
Yeah. And it looks like based on some of the research by Chamber of Commerce and some of the data they're collecting, about 1 in 4 are already using some form of AI to improve their performance in marketing and communications. And I think that's really telling that we're such an early stage adoption, but already 25% across the board are starting to use these technologies. So very excited to jump into it.
Yeah. One of the things that happen with elements like emerging technologies is that they make it into the mainstream without really people kind of sneaking in, if you will. And so you get to hear colleagues and you get to hear family members and you get to hear the news where all this activity around, in this case, AI is happening, and people will naturally have the tendency to explore. And that's, I think, what the stage we're at right now, not only for a small business community, but for others, we are at that exploration stage. And so 1 of every 4 is exploring, but you can imagine that's going to accelerate over time.
Yeah. And already a lot of products, even like Zoom or WebEx and things like that, they're already using kind of elements of AI. So sometimes it's the most basic use case that are being applied and being leveraged. So it may not be a fully changing their business model, but it's going to make their jobs a little bit easier kind of day by day. So good stuff there. All right, so if we jump into kind of some of the different channels, we've got a few of these items, and these are kind of key channels or processes that a business would be leveraging. And so we kind of broke down what is the challenge, what is the opportunity, and what is the risk. So maybe I'll let the doctor go through the first few of these. Maybe talk to us about the challenge that a small business has and some of the opportunities that AI has to leverage that. And then maybe I can unpack some of the risks on each of these.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, just in connection to what you mentioned, Brian, at the top when we were talking about the different kinds of AI, and we brought up the fact that there's these platforms that already exist, many of which are being infused with AI. CRM, the Customer Relationship Management platform, is one of those that is very, very centric to small business and big business community, right? And so the challenge there is sometimes there is a little bit of complexity around having a good CRM platform because the data that needs to be ingested to create or enable that platform, may not be in the state that one wants. And it takes a lot of time, sometimes, and a lot of effort to begin to parse through that data and kind of cleanse it, if you will. And so there is a real opportunity to say now, okay, here is all this data that we have, and we can have a very productive and very efficient CRM platform. And now we have the ability through AI to cleanse, to normalize those data sets a little more, right? And that will lead to a platform that is a lot more informed in the right way, and it will enable you professionals who are using that CRM platform to be more efficient. There's always risks with everything, right? As you know, and especially, and we're going to talk about platforms, and you are going to hear Brian and I probably bring up the data risk many times and in multiple ways and forms. So the risk is data, right? And the responsibility as a business community that we have when somebody is entrusting us with their data, And so the very first risk that is going to come up is we need to protect it. And there's, as a business community, we are mindful of that, but also regulators are mindful of that. So there is regulatory compliance that is beginning to be built that applies to the use of AI in the context of anything. Obviously, small business community CRM is one of those.
And just to kind of put a fine point on that is that, as you look at your existing, tools that are out there, they're going to be integrating these new features. Just understand that, it all requires data. And so you're going to be sharing your consumer data, your customer data with these systems and environments. You want to really look at that fine print and really understand how is the data being used. Some might say, you give us that data, we're going to use it to train all of our models, and we're going to use it in all these other ways. Some of these products may say, hey, yeah, you're going to give access to the data, but you're going to have your own tenancy, right? Or it's going to be contained within your own environment. And so you just need to be mindful as you consume these additional capabilities. You understand how it affects the privacy of the data that you have in that tool or in that system. So,
absolutely,
very good.
Yep, great point. Marketing automation is very well connected with your CRM platform. It's kind of the natural evolution. If you have a good customer relationship management system, you really want to enable your organization to leverage that customer relationship base, and marketing automation is one of those. So there is definitely, once you have a CRM, there is definitely an opportunity to leverage that through marketing automation. And in this case, AI, brings up some very specific benefits, right? One of them is when you do marketing, one of the things that I hear from marketing professionals, I am not one, I say that, but one of the things I hear is you want to be targeted. You want to be very specific about the different personas, if you will, that you need to engage in a marketing activity with. And that takes time and takes effort. It takes discovering patterns, for example, in your data sets. What are the commonalities related to very specific personas that you deal with? And so AI provides a fantastic opportunity for that challenge, the challenge of having to be more targeted, right? So the opportunity is now you have the ability to have the AI do that analysis for you and point you in the right direction. Right? Yeah. The risk there is sometimes we tend to leave things in autopilot, if you will, and AI can make fantastic decisions for you, but probably a good place in this conversation to talk about the fact that AI is not perfect, just like we are not perfect as humans. So we shouldn't over rely on what the output of that AI is. We should double check it. There is a risk. Again, if you tune into the news cycle, you hear things like hallucinations, which is the very creative part of AI. We have to double check on those things. But all in all, great opportunity here with both CRM and marketing automation.
Yeah. The one thing I'll point out is there's the CAN-SPAM Act. So you need to allow people to opt out or to, unsubscribe from your ad campaigns. So you want to be cognizant that whatever you're building and the way you're delivering, make sure people can unsubscribe. And then QA your campaigns. As the doctor mentioned, AI, garbage in, garbage out. AI can make mistakes and can kind of get into some runaway conditions, and they're sending out all kinds of things based on triggers you might have set up. So definitely want to monitor and do quality assurance on the logic you might be building behind it. And even on the receiving end, you might want to test some campaigns and make sure that what's being delivered is what you expected. And then once you get in that rhythm, you can kind of relax a little bit. But always be mindful that a little bit of a change in the rule sets and AI can go a little haywire. So
absolutely,
good stuff.
Absolutely. And I know where we're going next. We're going to financial management tools here. Well, Brian, you are in that space squarely. So why don't you take us to this financial management and accounting side?
Yeah, certainly. So, when it comes to, again, AI doing QA, it can look for, financial transactions that may not or should not be there. It can look for trends. It can help reconcile bank statements. It can help managing invoices. Some of the best use cases are around that, right? Being able to automatically send invoices on time, every time, and process payroll. Do other kinds of things that really automating the drudgery, right? The things that are very manual today. So you want to, but again, bad inputs lead to bad outputs. So you want to make sure your data is accurate and that you keep that secure, because if somebody got access to that system, they may be able to tweak a few things. And now maybe your invoicing or your payments, right? If you're paying you're paying your own suppliers, that money can be redirected and go to the wrong places. So you want to do good access controls around that. I'm kind of jumping into more of the risks already. But make sure that you are controlling access to those systems that you're going to be using, and make sure the data is accurate. Same thing can be said for your email systems, right? We often see a business email compromise where a bad guy got into your environment. So you want to look for ways to apply multi-factor authentication and otherwise, again, just manage the access and the permissions that are available to those systems. But certainly being able to automate and have almost a full-time accountant, right, at your disposal, running 24 hours a day, is a great uplift to any organization.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, well, I just hear you begin to bring a topic into the conversation, that probably is in everybody's mind, right? And that is the topic of cybersecurity. And
yeah.
The way we started to talk about these platforms, we started with CRM and we went to marketing automation. If you recognize that also the sensitivity of the data for each one of those platforms kind of keeps increasing, right? And so we get here when we're talking about financial information, and then the sensitivity of that information, it gets heightened because there's a lot of regulatory compliance around it, and also because, unfortunately, the bad guys find a lot of value in this type of data. So yeah, I agree with you, right? Protect the data. And I think we're going to cover maybe a few more things about cybersecurity, but that's going to be a very pervasive topic when we talk about AI from now on. It's a trend now. Cybersecurity used to be its own discipline, AI its own discipline, but now we'll see how they're both converging. So you're going to hear more and more about protect your data, put the right controls. Brian brought that up. So I think that was a great point.
For sure. Moving right into chatbots, I mean, the ways that we engage your clients, right? Email or other mechanisms, phone calls, those are your old kind of typical foundational ways. But now, having your website have a chatbot on it, that's kind of the bare bones. Everybody kind of expects that at this point. You go to a website, you want to be able to interact with ideally a human, but that's not always scalable. So that's what AI and its ability to chat with a human and be convincing that, hey, you're chatting with an intelligent entity, right, is already happening today. But as you start to say, how do I get a chatbot on my website, and you look for providers who do that, there's a heavy dependency on your own knowledge, right? Do you have an FAQ already? Do you have your own processes and your own product lists and pricing? How well have you kind of documented all of your services and the things that you provide? That's going to be really important, or the chatbot's not going to have anything to reference, right? The chatbot's only as smart as the data you allow it to have. And so you can see that 71% are planning to adopt some sort of chatbot into their own environment. And I think that's a big part of you getting ready for that is to, again, document your products and services, document the policies. Maybe it's what's the return policy. Again, looking at it almost like building out your FAQ so that it's a chattable FAQ document, right? And that's really how these work. You end up uploading a few PDFs of all the artifacts I've been describing, and it can now interact with somebody. But you want to be mindful. I won't name the name, but I heard of a very large entity, and they were doing some testing on AI chatbots. And on the one hand, they had their price list. On the other hand, they had some of their sales that were going on. And thirdly, they had a certain outcome they wanted, which was to make a certain number of sales. Well, lo and behold, a smart chatter started going down the path and ended up getting something for 99% off, right? Because the AI bot knew it could give a discount. It knew all these parameters. But the net outcome was that it gave away the farm, right? So you want to be very careful with how your prompting is and what kind of guardrails you set up for that. Any other thoughts on that one?
Right. Well, this is a very interesting one, I tell you, because for one, chatbots have been around for a very, very long time, and if you've been in the tech industry and you've been a customer, historically, there is a lot of frustration with the old chatbot, right? And now we're here where AI, and particularly conversational AI, is powering we even using different words for that. We call them digital assistants. And for example, in the case of Dell, I can tell you we have products on the digital human side of things where you have now a very human-like interaction with this emerging technology, inclusive of an avatar that looks very much human and kind of shows some kind of emotion through facial expression, right? So that's there. But to your point, which is very important, is how do you train these digital assistants or the digital humans is absolutely very important, because you want that conversation, that interaction to have a very high degree of fidelity. So if you don't have, on one side, if you don't have enough data, then the interaction may not be what you want. But also, if your data is housing any kind of bias, which you did not know about, this is where that bias is going to be expressed or exposed, right? And you have to be very careful about paying attention to these interactions. You don't want, if there is any kind of bias that was never intended to be, but it is in your data set, you don't want these digital assistants to behave one way with one group of people and then a different way with a different group of people, right? That some cases we call it bias, and some of the cases we can call it discrimination. So fantastic use of the technology. You need to be on point with your data and with checking it.
That's right, and that can happen at both ends. Not to get kind of too technical, but you can, on some of the outputs, right? You can then have additional prompting to validate before it gets delivered to your customer, right? And on the other side of it, the training data that's used, so you can scrub the training data to make sure it's not, lending to a biased outcome. So you've got a couple different guardrails, but most of you as small business owners should be able to leverage some kind of products that are out there in the market, but just be mindful of the bias. And be mindful of the quality of the information you're sharing with your particular instance, so that it doesn't misrepresent you to your customers. So
absolutely,
stuff there. Cybersecurity. Well, I tell you, we're also in our industry across the board. Every product that we're using, again, the AI hype cycle, as we call it, is happening. Everyone's got AI, some sort of version of it, whether it be a simple algorithm or whether it be a really complex, AI model. But they're saying that really almost half of businesses have been a victim of a cyber attack, and over 60% have actually gone out of business, which is really unfortunate. I've heard stories of scams that were perpetrated by AI. That I think it was a nonprofit that ended up losing $1 million in a wire and ended up shutting their doors, and that's just really unfortunate. But there really is no one who's off limits, whether it be for profit or nonprofit. But these tools, you have to continue to be mindful of who has access to them, who can adjust them, who can make those changes to the models, who can make changes to how they are, again, interacting with the world on your behalf. And so you've got to, have the right level of controls around it. I don't think that small and mid-sized businesses will be needing to implement large language model security, because you probably won't be at that next layer down of having to manage the models themselves. Hopefully, most of you will be leveraging commercial off-the-shelf products, some sort of software as a service that's provided to you, and the vendor will be managing those things. But those are questions you should ask during your due diligence, right? Is how are they managing security for those large language models? If you have an opportunity to speak to the sales reps for the various products you're going to acquire, ask them how they maintain the security of those tools. And then never be over reliant, right? Sometimes those tools do not work and you need to take it offline. So you want to have a good workaround plan for how you're going to, basically your cyber resilience, right? How would you continue to operate your business without these tools, and don't become too reliant on the tool in the long run. But any other thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I think you explained it super well. I will probably just reinforce a point that you made, and that is small, medium, or big business nothing has ever been off limits for the bad guys. And this is prior to AI. It takes effort and it takes time to create these attacks. They're not easy to create, except now we have AI, which the same way it enables us to be more efficient, us the good guys, it can enable the bad guys to be more efficient. And so if nobody was off limits before, believe it, nobody's off limits now, and creating these attacks in some ways, it's a lot easier, right? And that's, I'm not saying that to scare anybody, but just to for us to be aware of that, and that's a point that you brought up. The good news is AI can play both in the good side of things and in the bad side of things. So bad guys are already leveraging that technology. Commercial companies that are in the business of providing cybersecurity solutions and tools, including Dell Technologies, we are already on that workload of where do we use AI to help protect everybody, right? And there's some really good results that are coming out, companies and platforms. So there is a little bit of bad news, but there's also a little bit of good news on the cybersecurity side of things.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, moving on to our next. So strategies to address the risk. So let's jump into a few of these. So while there's a lot of great benefits, right, there's just kind of these 5 main takeaways that we wanted to impart. How you actually implement and execute it locally is always going to be the art of running a business, right? But really, like we've talked about, fundamentally understanding what is your business services, what are the needs that your business may have, and understanding how can AI be applied to improve those, right? But if you don't have a really solid understanding of, again, almost like that FAQ discussion, what do people often ask about your own services? Because as business owners, as like the owner managers, you can get you're so close to your products and services, you may not, be aware of how it's perceived externally. But understanding that, having good documentation on that, again, good foundational data for the AI to leverage, will put you in a much better place for success. Maybe Doctor, you take that next one about understanding the limitations and the AI capabilities. Maybe help them a little bit with that one.
Sure. Well, let me actually connect the dots with the first one, right?
Yeah.
Because one of the things that you brought up, and one of the things that is included in that umbrella, understanding your business and needs, is that you forget about the emergent technology for a second. Understand what do you need to improve in your business. One of the things, and this is an understanding limitation. One of the things that I see often happening is, here is a new gadget, and we need to use it. And we don't know for what, but we need to use it because everybody's talking about this new gadget, right? And this new gadget, in this case, we're talking about is AI. So if you're in a small business community and you have not begun to talk about AI, I'm telling you, it is okay. The most important thing you can do is take a step back and talk about, what do I need to improve? And then you connect to the understanding of what AI can do for you. And that will be a much more productive conversation, and one in which you probably mitigate the risk of failure, right? Although failing sometimes is a good thing, but we don't want to encourage the deployment of a technology just for the sake of, and without really specific outcomes in mind. So I think these two capabilities and limitations connected with the very first element that you brought up is absolutely very important. In terms of capabilities, AI is capable of a lot of things: scale, magnitude, recognizing patterns, great things. The limitation is, as always, that is going to produce what you want it to produce depending on the data that you provide. So I'm going to bring that point over and over again, that the quality and the depth of your data, it's going to be absolutely very important in this part of the conversation.
Yeah, reinforcing that, just the quality of your data, right, is critical. Again, whether it be PDFs that you're going to feed the chatbot, right, or whether it be your full data sets that you're going to allow some sort of platform to do a big analysis on. So really critical there. Legal and privacy compliance. Everyone operates in different environments, whether they be domestic or international, or maybe it's multi-state, where you might have a California Privacy Act, or you might have in New York, New York has a specific criteria, Massachusetts. A lot of different states have a lot of different requirements. So understanding what are the legal and privacy implications for you as a small business owner or mid-sized business manager. and understand how are you maintaining compliance with those requirements as you begin to do more of this data sharing of customer information. One thing I always preach and really try to drive home is around data minimization. If there's no need to share a date of birth or a social security number or an address or phone number, don't do it, right? If the AI only needs their name and maybe their email address to do a marketing thing, just give them that. Make sure you're not oversharing your business data with other services when it's not necessary. So
yeah, no, I totally agree. Matter of fact, I will probably say that out of all the elements that we have represented here in this slide, I think legal and privacy compliance is probably the most difficult, not just for small business, but for everybody. And because it takes a lot of educating on things that are not necessarily the simplest things ever, and they keep coming up, right? So one of the things that I can definitely recommend as a strategy here is, Brian, I know you're the leader in the community, is to have another session where you and an expert talk about these very specific things in a very detailed fashion, right? Like,
yeah.
how do you assess, for example, what is your level of compliance at this point if you are beginning to use AI? How are you respecting or not privacy? What are the very practical things you can do if you want to increase your privacy posture, right? And we have right in the middle of the graph, we have security, right? They go hand in hand. They almost like they cannot. The one cannot exist without the other. These are things that require a lot of very targeted discussion, and we're not going to have enough time to cover that today. But I can definitely recommend a second take of this, for your audience to talk about those things.
Yeah, often risk and compliance self-assessments are really a great first step. It's very often a simplified spreadsheet, but if you were just to Google around for a compliance assessment or a privacy assessment, you will likely find plenty of templates out there. And just find one that even if you're not a deep expert, finding a template and kind of going through those motions can help you start to frame out your own environment and give you a better context of how compliant you are and what kind of gaps may exist. But as always, make sure you get with a professional who can kind of validate some of your assumptions and some of the work you've been doing if you're going to do this in-house. And you can always reach out externally to other parties to help conduct those assessments if you feel necessary. So last one here, the ethical use and employee training. One of the biggest things is to make sure people understand the right ways to use some of those chat bots like ChatGPT. That's the big one people are aware of. So whether it be the ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, there's just so many out there now. The list goes on and on. And so making sure people understand, regardless of the type of model you're going to use or what service you're going to leverage, making sure that people understand what are the rules of the road, the ethical use of it, and the what kind of data that can be shared with those models, what's permissible, right? So having some sort of acceptable use and training your staff to make sure they understand the risks and the benefits too, right? If I'm going to leverage ChatGPT to help me create some marketing copy so that I can update, LinkedIn posts, that's great. But make sure there's a human in the loop, right? They're looking at that. They're not just setting it, forgetting it, and now AI is doing all kinds of things on your behalf and you aren't aware of it. So again, acceptable use for your employees, ethical use for when they're crafting these things. That's a key component in your overall setting the culture at your organization and how you're going to leverage these things.
Yeah. Oh, culture. That's awesome. I'm so glad you brought up culture here, because I absolutely believe that the ethical use of anything in an organization is part of the culture, right? And if it is not part of the culture, it may lead to unethical uses. And so I love the way you're aiming at it. I'll also say that sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes, something that is legal is not necessarily ethical, right? And so sometimes we don't make the distinction between the two. And it is always good to take that conversation internally in the organization and talk about, what's our DNA? What do we consider ethical and moral use of something? How does this align, the use of this, or how does this misalign with our mission, with how we want to impact society. And those are in some ways philosophical discussions. They're not easy. So those are not discussions that people undertake all the time, but would definitely encourage you to think about those things. And then through your policy framework, for example, in your organization, define what is ethical and what is moral use of a technology or the information that you have, and that will lead you to really good outcomes.
Yeah, if you don't proactively set that culture by having those conversations, the culture will kind of just become whatever acceptable whatever acceptable behavior people conduct, right? So you want to be proactive with that. Very good. So the role as a business owner and some of the resources to leverage. So 7 and 10 talk about limiting access to data would be harmful to their operations, and they want to be able to use that. But you have to be mindful of, again, the privacy laws and how does that interact with your company and how you can tap into this massive economy. There's so much opportunity for people to create new products and new disruptions and new ways to get in there. So what you can do as a business owner. So we kind of covered some of those in the last slide, but continuous education, continuing to look out for those webinars like these, webinars that go even more technical or deeper into certain tools and capabilities. That's a big one. Just staying abreast of the changes that are out there. There's no shortage of information and organizations who's as soon as large language models became a thing, there were companies who were large language model experts trying to sell you services, right? So be a little cautious there, but definitely keep your ears and eyes out for opportunities to learn more about how these things work and how they're leveraged, and really use cases, right? Success stories by other entities, how they've been able to bring that to bear. There's tons of forums on LinkedIn, on other sites, and different professional groups that meet, meetups, who are meeting in person. Thankfully, that's always better than being remote. But try to find those opportunities to join, different associations and meetups. Like I said, to engage your peers. You'll be surprised at how many people are out there looking to talk about how their problem could be solved by AI or other tool sets. And you never know what you may be teaching others, and you may be learning from others. So definitely look at those opportunities. Maybe Dr. Hernan, maybe talk to us about like the internal policy framework development and how orgs might be doing that.
Yeah. Well, this is super important, not just for AI, and hopefully some of you, all of you in the audience, already have that in place, right? But it is there is a lot of governance that needs to be in place for an organization to operate efficiently, and this is away from tools. This is how the culture is set in a very consistent manner. And so think about all the things that need to be governed in a company, anything from cybersecurity to the right use of, back in the day, I've been in technology for a while. So we used to have the acceptable use policy for computers. I don't know that we still do that, but you have to define what makes sense in your company for many different things. And so these policy frameworks are great. What I'll say about AI and policy frameworks is that we're very early. And so if you begin to explore this in your organization and you kind of don't make sense of it, I'll say you're not alone. There's days that I see things related to governance and compliance that come out, and I really don't understand them. It's going to be like this for a while. What I'll say to you is endorse diversity of opinion, bring the conversation internally, allow people in your organization to say their opinion, and then compile what makes sense. And obviously there is some structure that needs to be put in place. You cannot, as a small business owner, you cannot cater to everybody's opinion, but at least you will adopt, a policy framework and maybe some operating procedures that will account for a lot of what everybody in your organization is feeling. And I think that's a great way to go. Diversity, in my mind, diversity of opinion and conversation is number one here.
Very good. And the last one there, which you all are doing now: attend workshops, attend seminars. Get out there and find those sources of those trusted sources and learn more. You never know what the problem with this space is sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And so by engaging and participating, we start to learn, and it kind of fills out that total picture.
Right. I do have, though, a recommendation on number 4, and you don't need to go back, but in attending workshops and seminars. And that is, my recommendation is use a little bit more your independent judgment and your independent thinking when you hear me or Brian or anybody telling you something, because there's a lot of us speaking about this, and believe it or not, we hallucinate too. And so not everything that everybody says it's entirely accurate. And so always grain of salt, always use your independent thinking. Can I arrive to that conclusion on my own without having to believe what X or Y said to me? And that's a good exercise, I'll say, because we get bombarded with webinars and sessions and dinners and breakfast, and everybody's talking about this, and sometimes there's conflicting information, so be careful. Like I said, choose carefully. That's the other thing.
There you go. All right, just a few. You might have to take a picture of this one because we're going to move on pretty quickly, but the real takeaway is that there's a lot of government resources, whether it be from the SBA, Department of Commerce, FTC. You see a whole list of them here. I'd say, go and check out those individual websites and see what they're talking about in the context of AI and how it might affect your business, whether it be through a compliance or opportunities, whether it be some of the risks. And you can see the very bottom, there's research grants. Who knows? Depends on what your small business is doing. But there may be opportunities to acquire R&D funds to do more things in this space. So we just wanted to really show this slide to say the federal government is available. They are producing a lot of information on AI, and we encourage you to research that and understand what is about out there and available to you today. I don't know if there's anything on this list or anything not on this list you might want to point people to, Dr. Hernan, but
no, with this slide, I just want to issue a challenge to everybody, right? And I'm using empathy here. If I was a small business owner and I see this list of things, resources from the federal government, I'm like, how am I going to tackle this? So here is your challenge for everybody. Use your favorite AI tool and ask the AI tool to give you a summary about any one of these resources and to tell you how is it impactful for your own business. And you can write this plain English. I am the owner of a small manufacturing plant in Florida, and I am new to AI, and I see these resources. Can you outline the opportunities that I have through this, or can you outline what does this mean for me? And have an AI begin to use AI to demystify all these things. You're gonna go bananas if you read all of these things. I don't think Brian has. I have not. But we are now leveraging AI to give us some of the summaries for these things. So that's the challenge for all of you, almost at the end of this presentation.
There you go. So the future of AI is small business. These are just some trends to watch. I know we're getting a little close on time. I want to encourage you guys to go ahead and in the chat, go ahead and ask any questions you may have. Hopefully you've been tracking along. And in our next session, next few minutes here, we'll be doing some Q&A. But some of the trends, so generative AI and democratization, again, ChatGPT, all of those capabilities are being far more accessible. So it's leveling the playing field. And I know there's a lot of discussion around OpenAI and their mission set, how they've focused. But by and large, I think they've done a lot of excellent work in allowing people to gain access to these tools early on and understand how those can affect their lives, their personal lives, their business lives, et cetera. AI for workplace productivity. Again, we always talk about automate the boring stuff, right? All the drudgery, get rid of it. This is a great place for that. It's not just in the physical space, but the digital space, right? What can we do that increases our productivity and our work output and saves you time? Hopefully, those opportunities abound for sure right now. So looking into that. Regulation, copyright, ethical use, there is a lot. There's actually just as much as good can come from these, so can the bad. So you want to make sure that, whether it be it's not an accident or a failure in the way that you deploy it that's causing some of these maybe compliance concerns or reputational exposure. But just the way that you're leveraging it, have a good legal review of how you're approaching these things and uses of these things, and then keep abreast of the changes in the regulation. There will be regulatory change coming down the pipeline across the board. I know they want to self-regulate in a lot of ways, but just be mindful of the regulatory landscape and how that could change right underneath your feet. And then multimodal AI, that's when you start talking about the integration of not just audio and visual and text, but it's when they all come together and you start to be able to do what you can do now with GPT-4o. When it can see the environment, you can ask it questions, it can produce an image, all the multiple inputs can result in multiple outputs. That's just going to continue to expand in its effectiveness, its accuracy, and its speed. So it's massive changes are happening almost every quarter in this space, probably every month in this space, every day almost. So don't get discouraged if you're trying to work towards something and then something new and better has come along. Just keep adapting, keep rolling with those changes. I think that we'll find a balance of normalcy at some point, maybe not yet. But those are some of the kind of big trends that we had kind of talked through. Anything else on there?
No. I think I know we're closing. So two things that I want to say about this, trends. One is, I want to make sure the audience understands the velocity which AI moves is different than anything else we've seen in the past. The velocity is incredible. It moves very, very, very fast. The second thing that I want to say is AI has been a differentiator, a game changer for a lot of industries. And so you think about that in the context of competitive advantage, and that leads to a decision that we all have to make. How do we want to remain competitive? And not doing anything about it may not be the right thing to do. At least beginning to think about these trends, these challenges, these risks, and kind of coming up with a plan may be a good very first step, if you haven't taken any, to begin to be part of that competitive advantage equation. You don't want to be left behind.
Yep.